I want a child from you, said the Apache woman to the shy cowboy. Eli Thompson had always been a quiet man. He preferred the open sky to the walls of a town, the smell of fresh hay to the noise of people, and the company of horses to the chatter of men. Life on the ranch was simple, predictable, and safe. Psst. From dawn until dusk he rode along the wide sun-baked plains, guiding cattle, mending fences, and keeping an eye on the horizon. His world was one of solitude, of wide-open spaces, and of the rhythmic patterns of work that gave him comfort. The plains stretched endlessly, golden and green under the sun, broken only by distant hills and the ribbon of a river winding through the valley. Eli liked the river. It was a quiet place where he could rest his horses, fill water barrels, and sometimes just sit and think. There was peace in the gentle rush of the water, a kind of quiet that matched the one he carried inside himself. He had always been shy around people. He wasn't rude or unkind, but words didn't come easily to him. Conversation was like riding a horse he didn't fully understand, awkward, unsure, and sometimes frightening. It was on one of those mornings with the air crisp and the sky painted with the soft pinks and blues of sunrise that Eli first saw her. She appeared like a vision on the far side of the river, tall and strong, with long black hair catching the sunlight. Her movements were confident, graceful, and purposeful. She carried herself in a way that made her seem part of the land itself. Her name, he would later learn, was Nokomis. Eli didn't approach at first. He watched from a distance, leaning against a fence post, careful not to make a sound. There was something mesmerizing about the way she moved, the way she looked at the world with eyes that seemed to understand everything. She wasn't just walking along the riverbank. She seemed to be listening to the wind, reading the ripples in the water, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her feet. He had never seen anyone like her. Days passed, and Eli kept noticing her. Sometimes she would appear in the early morning mist, gathering herbs or checking traps along the river. Other times he would see her near the trees, teaching young children how to track animals or helping elders carry water. She was deeply connected to the land and the people who lived on it. Yet she moved with a quiet independence that Eli found both intimidating and fascinating. One afternoon, when the sun was high and the heat shimmered across the plains, Eli's horse spooked near the river. The sudden movement sent him sliding into the shallow water, soaking his boots and the hem of his trousers. He cursed softly under his breath, more embarrassed than hurt, when he heard a calm, clear voice behind him. "You're not used to the river, are you?" the voice asked. Ellie turned to see Nokomis standing a few steps away. She wore a simple dress of soft brown cloth, and her eyes held a mix of curiosity and amusement. Eli's heart raced. He had never been good with people, let alone someone as striking as her. Desk. She smiled, a small, knowing smile. The river can be tricky. You have to respect it. Watch its currents and listen to the sounds. It tells you everything you need to know.
Eli nodded, feeling both embarrassed and fascinated. Her words were simple, but there was a wisdom in them he couldn't ignore.
He wanted to say more, to ask questions, to learn from her, but the words stuck in his throat like dry hay in a throat too nervous to swallow. Over the next few days, Eli found himself returning to the river more often, not just for the water, not just for the cattle, but hoping to see her again. Each encounter was brief, filled with shy glances and careful words. Sometimes she would ask him about his work on the ranch, and sometimes he would ask about the plants she was gathering or the animals she followed. Their conversations were short, but each one left Eli feeling more alive than he had in years. Nokomis, for her part, seemed aware of Eli's shyness, but she didn't push him. But she didn't ignore him either. She treated him with a kind of gentle patience, speaking with him as though he were already part of her world, even if he couldn't see it yet himself. Jokes. And sometimes her laughter seemed to carry across the plains like a melody only he could hear. One morning Eli arrived at the river to find Nokomis already there, crouched by the water and examining something in her hands. The sun had not yet fully risen, and the mist hung low over the river, curling around the reeds and rocks. Eli approached quietly, unsure whether he should speak.
"You came early," she said, looking up at him with eyes that seemed to see straight into him.
"Yes," Eli replied, his voice rough but honest.
I like the mornings." She nodded, her gaze returning to the water. "The mornings are honest. The world is quiet then. You can hear it thinking." Ellie didn't understand what she meant, but the words stayed with him. He found himself thinking about them long after he had left the river, imagining the world as she did, alive and full of meaning. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became routine. They shared meals by the river, sometimes catching fish or collecting berries, sometimes just sitting in companionable silence. Eli began to feel a strange sense of freedom around her. He could speak more easily, laugh more genuinely, and even share little pieces of himself that he had kept hidden for years. Nokomis, in turn, seemed to enjoy his company, teaching him about the land, about patience, and about seeing things in ways he had never imagined. One evening, as the sky blushed orange and purple with the setting sun, Nokomis asked Eli to sit with her on a fallen log by the river. They watched the water shimmer and flow, listening to the calls of distant birds. "You have a good heart," she said suddenly. Eli looked at her, surprised by the directness of her words. "Try," he muttered, unsure of how to respond. "Bus, you do more than try," she said, smiling softly. "You notice things."
"You care. Most men your age only see the land as work."
"You see it as life."
Ellie felt warmth rise to his cheeks.
No one had ever said anything like that to him before. He wanted to say something in return, to tell her how he felt, but the words tangled themselves in his tongue. Instead, he nodded, feeling the strange, quiet power of her gaze. As the weeks passed, Eli realized something he had never admitted even to himself. He was falling for her, not just for her beauty or strength, but for the way she made him see the world differently. She challenged him, taught him, and yet gave him the space to be himself. And Nokomis, in her steady way, seemed to recognize the change in him, though she never mentioned it aloud. One morning, while the plains were covered in a thin blanket of mist, Nokomis spoke words that would forever change the course of Eli's life. She looked at him, eyes steady and unwavering, and said, "I want a child from you." Eli froze, staring at her as if she had spoken in a language he could not understand.
The world around him seemed to hold its breath. The river, the reeds, even the distant hills waiting for his reply.
He had never expected such words, never imagined a life so entwined with someone else.
His shyness, his caution, his fear of change, all of it surged within him, demanding an answer he did not know he could give. Nokomis waited, patient yet firm, giving him space to think, to feel, to consider what such a life would mean. And though Eli did not speak, his heart raced with a mixture of fear and hope, the first taste of a love that could change everything he had ever known. Eli did not speak for a long time. The words Nokomis had said, "I want a child from you," hung in the air like the mist rising from the river. His heart pounded in his chest, and his mind raced. He had never thought about having a family, at least not in such a direct way. The idea was frightening, overwhelming, and yet, strangely, exciting. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the confidence and determination in her eyes. She was not asking. She was not pleading. She was stating a truth, one that she had already decided for herself. I don't know what to say, Eli finally whispered, his voice rough and hesitant. Nokami smiled softly, not with amusement, but with understanding. You don't have to say anything yet, she said. I know it is not an easy question. But it is my wish. I have thought about it for a long time. Eli nodded, still unsure how to respond. He had spent his life following routines, caring for cattle, and keeping to himself. Love had been a quiet, distant thought, and family had seemed like a dream for someone else. Yet, standing there beside Nokomis, he felt a stir inside him that he could not ignore. Brave, to trust, to step into something new. But fear gripped him, a fear he had never faced before. The days that followed were strange and quiet. Eli returned to the river, but now there was a tension between them, a delicate awareness of the unspoken question. Yes, he tried to focus on work, tending cattle, mending fences, and riding across the plains, but his thoughts kept returning to Nokomis. He remembered the way her hair shone in the sunlight, the way her hands moved with strength and grace, and the quiet wisdom in her voice. Nokomis, for her part, was patient. She did not push him. She understood that Eli needed time. She continued her work along the river, gathering herbs, teaching children, and caring for her people. Yet she made a point of including him, of sharing small moments that slowly drew them closer. She would call him over to see a bird's nest, or to help lift a heavy basket, or to watch the sunset. Each act, simple as it seemed, was a bridge, a gentle invitation into her world.
One afternoon, Eli found himself walking along the riverbank, carrying a basket of fresh herbs she had asked him to gather.
The sun was high, and the heat shimmered across the water, making the air feel thick and heavy. He spotted her a short distance ahead, crouched beside a small fire, cooking a simple meal of corn and fish. She looked up as he approached, her eyes lighting up with quiet warmth.
"You came," she said simply.
I did, he replied, setting down the basket. I wanted to help. Nokomis nodded, and for a few minutes they worked side by side in silence. Eli found comfort in the rhythm of their movements, in the way their hands brushed against one another without thought, in the small smiles they shared. It was a world far removed from the routine of the ranch, yet it felt familiar, safe and true. When the meal was ready, they sat on the riverbank, legs dangling above the water, sharing the simple food. Nokami spoke of her childhood, of the traditions of her people, and the ways they lived in harmony with the land. Eli listened, fascinated. He realized that he had never known such a deep connection to the world around him. He asked questions, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes shyly, but she answered patiently, never judging, always encouraging. You see the world differently, she said at one point, looking at him with intensity. You notice things most people ignore. You feel things most people overlook. That is why I want you to share this life with me. Eli felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of pride, fear, and longing. He wanted to believe her, wanted to step into the life she was offering, but doubt gnawed at him. Could he be the man she needed? Could he take responsibility for a child, for a family, for a life so different from the one he had always known? Over the next weeks, their bond grew stronger. They worked together on small projects, repairing a broken fence, clearing brush from the path along the river, or helping an elderly neighbor carry firewood. Each task brought them closer, each shared laugh and small conversation weaving them together. Eli began to feel a sense of belonging he had never known. He felt needed, valued, and seen in a way that went beyond words. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned shades of gold and purple, Nokomis led Eli to a quiet spot by the river. She sat on a large rock, motioning for him to join her. "Do you know why I asked for a child?" she asked softly, her voice calm and steady. Eli shook his head, unsure what to say. "I asked because life is not just about ourselves," she explained. "It is about what we leave behind, about the love we share, about the future we create. A child is not just a child. It is hope. It is connection. It is life carried forward. I see that in you. That is why I asked." Her words struck Eli deeply. He thought about the plains, the river, the cattle, and the quiet life he had always known, realizing his breath as this could have destroyed. Being his world out over it, also felt with his own sullen purpose, he zapped into the common and read it. For the first time, Eli spoke with honesty and courage. I don't know if I am ready," he admitted.
But I want to try. I want to learn.
I want to be with you. Nokomis smiled, reaching out to gently take his hand.
"That is all I ask," she said. "We will learn together. Goodbye." Life teaches us slowly, step by step. But the first step is always courage. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of understanding. Eli began to take more initiative, helping Nokomis with daily tasks, asking questions about her people and traditions, and opening up about his own past. He told her about his childhood on the ranch, the loneliness he had felt, and the dreams he had kept hidden. Nokomis listened, never interrupting, always offering support and gentle guidance. One afternoon, while the sun warmed the plains, Eli attempted to teach Nokomis how to ride his horse. "Psst," she laughed, a sound as clear and bright as the river, as the horse spooked at a sudden noise. Eli, embarrassed but determined, calmed the horse and guided her carefully. When she finally sat confidently in the saddle, she looked at him with admiration. "You are patient," she said. "Most people would have given up, but you keep trying." Eli smiled, feeling a surge of pride. I just want to learn with you," he said. Their connection deepened not just through words, but through actions, shared experiences, and quiet moments of trust. Eli discovered a part of himself he had never known, a man capable of care, of patience, of love. Nokomis in turn saw that Eli could rise to challenges, that he could embrace life with an open heart, and that he was willing to step beyond fear for the sake of something meaningful. As the weeks passed, Eli's fear began to transform into determination. He realized that the life Nokomis offered was not a life of limitations, but a life of possibility. The idea of raising a child with her, of building a family, no longer seemed terrifying. It seemed necessary, right, and full of promise. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and red, Eli and Nokomis sat together by the river, watching the water glint like liquid fire. Eli took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision and the hope it carried. "Nokomis," he said quietly, "I want to try. I want to be with you. I want to face this life with you, whatever it brings." Nokomis looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight and the strength of her own resolve. "Then we will," she said softly, "together, step by step." And in that moment, with the river flowing beside them, the plains stretching endlessly around them, and the sky painted with colors of hope, Eli realized that love was not just about comfort or safety. It was about courage, about taking a step into the unknown, and about trusting someone else with your heart. Their journey had only just begun, but both knew that the connection they had found was rare and precious. And for the first time in his life, Eli felt truly alive. not just as a cowboy tending cattle, but as a man ready to embrace life, love, and the future. After Eli had promised to try, the world around them seemed brighter yet more complicated. Life on the plains was never easy, and now, with the future stretching before them like uncharted land, both Eli and Nokomis felt the weight of responsibility pressing on their shoulders. Their days continued with work and routines, but now each small task carried a deeper meaning, a silent test of patience, understanding, and courage.
Ellie struggled more than he expected.
He had always been shy and cautious, and now he had to make choices that mattered not just for himself, but for Nokomis and the life they were beginning to imagine together. There were mornings when he would rise before dawn, feeling nervous and unsure, and ride along the river, thinking about what it meant to be a partner, to care for someone beyond himself. He worried about whether he could meet her expectations, whether he could step into the role she had asked of him.
Nokomise, as always, was steady.
Breath. She moved through life with grace and certainty, performing her tasks along the river, teaching the children, and caring for her people. She understood Eli's fears, yet she knew he needed to confront them on his own. She did not scold him or push him too hard. She simply offered gentle guidance when needed and trusted that he would rise to the challenge. One morning, Eli arrived at the river to find Nokomis examining a small patch of wildflowers near the water's edge.
Peish. He hesitated, unsure whether to approach.
She looked up and smiled, as if reading his thoughts.
"Come," she said. "I want to show you something." He walked over, trying to keep his voice steady.
"What is it?" "These flowers," she said, pointing to the delicate blooms. "They grow in the shadows of the larger trees. Most people pass them by without noticing, but they are strong. They survive, and they bloom beautifully. Just like life. Sometimes the things that seem small are the strongest." Ellie nodded slowly, taking in her words. It was a simple lesson, yet it carried more meaning than he could immediately grasp. He realized that life, much like the flowers, required patience, attention, and care. And so did the relationship he was building with Nokomis. The days that followed were filled with small challenges. Eli had to confront parts of himself he had long ignored: his fear of failure, his hesitation to act, and his tendency to retreat when faced with uncertainty. Nokomis, though patient, encouraged him to step forward, to take responsibility, and to trust his instincts. She would ask him to lead simple tasks, like repairing a fence or gathering wood for the fire, and then step back, letting him find his own way. "Sometimes," Eli faltered, "we would make mistakes, misjudge a horse, or underestimate the strength needed to move a heavy log. Each time he felt frustration and doubt, thinking perhaps he was not strong enough, not capable enough, to meet the life Nokomis had envisioned. But each time, she was there, not to scold, but to guide."
"You will learn," she would say softly.
"We all learn. The land teaches us."
Life teaches us, and love teaches us, if we are willing to listen.
Her words became a kind of anchor for him. He began to see that struggle was not a sign of weakness, but a necessary part of growth. He began to take more initiative, thinking ahead, planning tasks, and anticipating challenges. And slowly he noticed a change within himself, a confidence he had never known, a courage that grew with each small victory. Yet, even as they grew closer, tension sometimes entered their days. Differences in culture and upbringing became apparent in subtle ways. Eli, raised on a quiet ranch, struggled to understand some of Nokomis's customs, while she, steeped in tradition, occasionally grew frustrated with his hesitations or lack of knowledge. They had disagreements over simple matters: how to prepare food, which paths to take along the river, or how to approach certain tasks. But each disagreement ended with patient conversation, not anger. One evening, after a long day of repairing fences and tending cattle, they sat by the river, exhausted and quiet. Eli spoke first, his voice low. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to be the man you need, but I am afraid sometimes. Afraid I will fail. Afraid I cannot give you what you deserve." Nokomis reached out, placing her hand over his. "Eli, fear is natural. It does not mean you will fail. It means you care. It means you are alive. We will face these fears together. Step by step, day by day. That is how life is built. Slowly, with care." Great. Her words comforted him, yet they also reminded him of the responsibility ahead. The promise of a child, of building a family, was not just a dream. It was a commitment, and he had to be ready, not just in heart, but in action. As the weeks passed, Eli found himself thinking more about the future. He imagined what it would be like to care for a child, to teach them about the plains, the river, the land, and the values Nokomis held dear. He thought about passing on lessons about respect, courage, and love. The idea no longer seemed impossible. It seemed necessary, right, and full of meaning. But life on the plains was not without hardship. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the valley, sending rain and wind crashing through the trees. Eli and Nokomis worked together to secure the horses and bring the animals to shelter. The river swelled with the rain, and the plains became slick and treacherous. Eli's fears returned, not of love, but of failing in practical ways, of being unable to protect those he cared about. Through the storm, Nokomis remained calm and collected, guiding him and the animals with steady hands. Her confidence reassured him, showing him that fear could be managed, that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. By the time the storm passed, Eli was soaked, tired, and muddy, but he felt a new sense of pride and capability. He realized that facing challenges together made them stronger, individually and as a pair.
In quieter moments, they continued to grow closer emotionally.
Pressed, Eli spoke of his childhood on the ranch, the loneliness he had felt, and the dreams he had quietly harbored. Nokomis shared stories of her family, of lessons learned from elders, and of the traditions that shaped her view of the world. Each story deepened their understanding of one another, revealing not just differences, but common values: respect, patience, love, and resilience. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the river, Eli and Nokomis sat together on a fallen log. The air was warm, filled with the scent of wet earth and wildflowers. Eli spoke softly, almost to himself. "I never knew life could feel like this," he said. Dispatch. Not just happy, but meaningful. Not just quiet, but full of purpose.
I didn't know it was possible to feel this alive. Nokomi smiled, resting her head lightly on his shoulder.
"Life is full of surprises," she said, "but only if we are willing to face them, to take risks, to step forward even when we are afraid. That is how we grow. That is how we create something lasting." Eli nodded, feeling a swell of emotion he could not fully describe. He realized that love was not easy.
It required effort, courage, and patience. It required confronting fears and embracing responsibility.
And yet, it was the most rewarding journey he had ever undertaken. As the evening shadows lengthened, they watched the river flow, the plain stretching endlessly around them. Eli understood that the promise of a child, the life Nokomis had envisioned, was not just about raising a family. It was about trust, partnership, and the willingness to face life together no matter the obstacles. It was about building something enduring, rooted in love and courage that could withstand the tests of time. Days turned into weeks, and Eli's confidence continued to grow. He learned to act decisively, to plan, and to trust not just himself, but the bond he shared with Nokomis. The challenges of daily life, the storms, the work on the ranch, the differences in culture were no longer sources of fear, but opportunities to grow stronger. In quiet moments by the river, they would sit hand in hand, sharing dreams and hopes for the future. They spoke of the child they might have one day, of the lessons they would teach, and of the life they would build. Each conversation was filled with hope, love, and determination, strengthening the foundation of their relationship. And so, the plains witnessed their growing bond. A shy cowboy learning courage, a strong Apache woman teaching patience and wisdom, and the slow, steady building of trust that would carry them toward the life they both longed for. Through struggles, doubts, and fears, Eli and Nokomis discovered that love was not just a feeling, it was action, choice, and commitment. And in that discovery they found the courage to face whatever lay ahead. Seasons began to change, and with them, Eli and Nokomis felt the rhythms of life shift around them. The plains were no longer just a place of work for Eli. They had become a landscape of hope, of dreams, and of possibility. Every sunrise carried promise, every river bend held memory, and every gentle breeze reminded them of the bond that had grown between them. Eli had changed in ways he had never imagined. The shy, hesitant cowboy who had once struggled to speak to Nokomis now found strength in his actions, courage in his choices, and confidence in his heart. The fear that had once held him back, fear of failure, fear of responsibility, fear of stepping into the unknown, had begun to soften. He had learned, slowly but surely, that life's greatest rewards often came to those who dared to trust, who dared to love, and who dared to act despite their fears. Nokomis, too, had seen change in him. She had always known his heart was good, but now she could see it fully, steadfast, loyal, and capable of deep, enduring love. She had watched him confront storms, mend fences, and care for the animals with skill and patience. She had seen him open his heart, share his past, and embrace the vision of a life together. And she knew, in her quiet certainty, that Eli was ready to take the next step. One crisp autumn morning, as the sun rose over the plains and painted the horizon with soft shades of gold, Nokomis approached Eli with a small bundle of herbs in her hands. The air was cool and fragrant with the scent of fallen leaves and the river flowing gently nearby. "I want you to see something," she said, her eyes bright with purpose. Eli followed her to a small clearing near the river. The grass was still damp with dew, and the light fell gently on the earth, making it sparkle. Nokomis knelt down and pointed to a small patch of soil that had been carefully tended. Tiny green shoots had begun to emerge, delicate and full of life. "These are the seeds I planted weeks ago," she explained. "I wanted you to see how something small, with care and patience, can grow into something strong and beautiful, just like us. Just like our future." Eli knelt beside her, marveling at the tiny shoots. A sense of wonder filled him, and for a moment the weight of fear and doubt lifted. He realized that life, like the soil and seeds, required attention, patience, and nurturing. And with that care, anything, love, family, hope, could flourish. Days passed and they continued to work together, tending the land, caring for the animals, and sharing small, meaningful moments. Eli found joy in the simplicity of these tasks, in the quiet rhythm of life on the plains, and in the companionship of Nokomis. He began to imagine a future with her not as something distant or frightening, but as a natural, inevitable unfolding of the bond they had built. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the river, Eli and Nokomis sat together on the river bank. The water reflected the colors of the sky, shimmering and alive. Eli took a deep breath, feeling the courage welling up inside him. He had thought about this moment countless times, imagining what he would say, how he would express the feelings that had grown in his heart. "Nokomis," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I've thought a lot about what you asked me, about a child, about our life together, and I want you to know that I am ready. I want to share my life with you, to face everything together. I want to build the future you dream of." Nokomis looked at him, her eyes shining with warmth and pride. She reached out, taking his hands in hers. "Eli," she said softly, "I have always known your heart. I have seen your courage, your kindness, and your love. And now we step forward together, step by step, day by day. That is all we need."
In the days that followed, they began to prepare for the new chapter in their lives.
They worked together to make a home, simple but welcoming, near the river.
Eli built a small wooden cabin, sturdy and strong, while Nokomis decorated it with items that reflected her heritage and traditions.
Every corner held care, every detail reflected thought, and every moment shared strengthened their bond. As they settled into this new rhythm, they also shared laughter, stories, and quiet moments of tenderness. Eli had never known such peace, such fulfillment, and he cherished every moment with Nokomis. He learned to appreciate not only her wisdom and strength, but also her gentleness, humor, and the way she saw beauty in the smallest details of life. One morning, as the first snowflakes of winter began to fall lightly on the plains, Nokomis took Eli's hand and led him to the river. The landscape was quiet and serene, the water flowing beneath a thin layer of ice. She spoke softly, her breath visible in the cold air. "I feel it," she said. "The time is near. Our life is beginning in ways we have dreamed of, and soon we will have another life to nurture, to teach, and to love."
Day.
Ellie felt a rush of emotion, joy, anticipation, and a touch of fear, but he knew he was ready.
He had faced his doubts, embraced responsibility, and opened his heart fully. With Nokomis by his side, he knew he could face anything. The weeks that followed were filled with preparation and quiet anticipation. They cleared fields, repaired fences, and gathered supplies. Eli learned from Nokomis how to teach, guide, and nurture in ways he had never imagined. Each day was a lesson, each small success a triumph, and through it all, their love grew deeper, more resilient, and more unshakable. Finally, the moment came when the first signs of new life appeared. Ellie and Nokomis stood together, hands clasped, eyes shining, as they realized that the journey they had taken, the struggles, the fears, the lessons, had led them to this point. They would soon welcome a child, a symbol of their love, their courage, and their commitment. Eli felt a profound sense of gratitude. He thought of the shy, hesitant man he had been, of the quiet days on the plains, and of the river that had first brought them together. He realized that every challenge, every fear, every moment of doubt had been necessary to prepare him for this new life. And he knew, with certainty, that he would rise to the responsibility, just as Nokomis had believed he could. As the sun set on the plains, painting the sky with brilliant shades of orange and pink, Eli and Nokomis stood side by side, looking out over the land they had come to love together. The river flowed steadily, the wind whispered through the trees, and the plains stretched endlessly before them. In that moment, they felt a sense of peace and fulfillment that neither had known before. They knew that life would bring challenges, as it always did. Storms would come, tasks would be difficult, and days would be long. But they also knew that together they could face anything. They had built a foundation of love, trust, and patience that would sustain them through every trial. And soon, with a child to nurture and guide, they would pass on the lessons of courage, care, and connection that had brought them together. Eli turned to Nokomis, his heart full of emotion. "I promise," he said softly, to be here, to learn, to grow, and to love. For you, for our child, for the life we are building together. Nokomis smiled, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset and the strength of her own heart.
And I promise, she replied, to stand by you, to guide, to teach, and to love.
Together, always. And so, on the quiet plains, by the river that had first brought them together, Eli and Nokomis embraced the next chapter of their lives.
Their love had grown through patience, struggle, and understanding. Their bond was strengthened by challenges faced and lessons learned.
Bah. And the promise of new life, of a child, of a shared future, filled their hearts with hope, joy, and unwavering commitment. They knew that life would continue to test them, that work on the land would never end, and that the path ahead would have its trials. But they also knew that they were ready, together, to face whatever came. The shy cowboy had grown into a man of courage, responsibility, and love. The strong Apache woman had found a partner who could walk beside her, shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart, and together they had discovered the true meaning of family, trust, and enduring love. As the night fell over the plains and the stars began to twinkle in the clear sky, Eli and Nokomis sat by the river, hands intertwined, hearts full of hope, and minds filled with dreams. The future stretched before them, vast and open, full of promise and possibility. And with love as their guide, they knew they could face it all. Together, step by step, day by day, building a life that would endure, nurture, and inspire for generations to come.